I'm Jill Heinerth, explorer in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographic Society. I'm a cave diving explorer, and I'm going to offer you a little bit of insight on the recent Thai cave rescue operation. The difference between open water diving and cave diving is akin to the difference between a stroll in the park and a spacewalk. There's a world of difference. When you go on a scuba dive, like a recreational diver would on a vacation, you're in shallow water, and at any point, if there's a problem, you can immediately surface and address that problem. So if you get some water in your mask, or if you've suddenly run out of breathing gas, you can go to the surface and you'll be fine. A cave diver has to operate in complete blackness and bring artificial lights that sometimes aren't even adequate to illuminate the water because there's no clarity. As in this recent cave rescue situation in Thailand, the water was so stirred up and muddy, even lights didn't make it possible for them to be able to see underwater. Now, add to that any time you have a problem underwater, you can't surface because there's rock over your head and you're in a completely water-filled room. So if you have an issue, you have to be able to deal with it in place. Now, some of the spaces within these cave environments are also extremely small enough that a diver might have to remove some equipment, push it through, get through a small restricted space, and then put their gear back on. Once again, in complete darkness where they can't see, while grasping a guideline as a navigational reference that gives them tactile feedback to find the exit. Those are just a couple of the issues that cave divers have to deal with. It's very different than vacation diving. First, when the kids were determined missing, local authorities and a few local cave divers actually met at the cave and started to assess the situation. At that point, there'd been quite a lot of rain and there was high velocity water flowing through the cave. So high that if a cave diver moved underwater through a space, they would have to pull themselves through these small spaces just to move forward. The current was too strong to swim against. Now, things didn't look good at first, but fortunately a lot of people came in from around the world, and contrary to popular belief, these were not like people who work as cave divers or people who work as military SEAL divers in other parts of the world. These are people who have other jobs in their lives, software engineers, firemen, teachers, lawyers, and they have cave diving as their recreational pursuit. But these people are cave explorers who do this on their own free time with their own funds and have been involved in rescues before. So these people came from all around the world as volunteers and said, how can we help? The first teams to really head into the cave and do some serious exploration work were a team of British divers, including Rick Stanton and John Valanthan, who determined that they needed to explore and lay a permanent guideline, a tactile reference all the way to the entrance and try and locate where the kids were based on information that they gleaned from locals. Now, it wasn't just these guys in the cave. There were other supporting divers that were also ferrying in and out of the cave through a series of what we call sumps. So you swim through a portion of cave that's completely flooded, and then you surface into an area that has a little bit of an air bell. And some of these air bells can serve as camps or resupply depots for more air. Now, I think the world really tuned in when Rick and John were successful in finding the kids. They surfaced and they shot that iconic GoPro footage that's been viewed by tens of millions of people around the world, where Rick says, "How many are you?" And the answer comes back, "We are 13." And he says, "Brilliant." But according to Rick, he was also counting heads, looking in the darkness, trying to see if everybody was indeed still alive. And what a huge relief that they were. But that was only phase 1 of the rescue. Then they had to come out and make a plan for first assessing the medical condition of the people in the cave, sustaining them in what were already low oxygen and high carbon dioxide environmental issues, and then making a plan to move forward. Once the kids were found, phase 2 of the rescue was started, and it's incredible that it was a rescue at all, because most of the time that cave search operations are embarked upon, they are body recoveries. They are not rescues, so it's truly remarkable. But we can't lose sight of the fact that one Thai Navy diver did lose his life, and it was really a sacrifice, because at that point, when he ran out of air in the cave and died, it forced everybody to reset the operation and to calm down and slow down and be very pragmatic and safety conscious about the way forward. At that point, the team was significantly pared down in order to control the situation. There needed to be an ongoing effort to resupply the chamber where the kids were located. There needed to be a plan made for getting the kids out of there or keeping them in place. And all of that needed to be handled safely. At the same time, there are pumping operations, engineering operations. There's people climbing around in the mountains looking for holes down towards the kids so that they can either establish an air supply or establish a resupply point or even cut their way into the cave. Even people like Elon Musk threw in some ideas about bringing the kids out in a small submarine or other fanciful operations like inflating a bubble inside the cave to protect the kids against the environment. Now, although some of these are crazy sounding ideas, brainstorming at this point in the rescue was critical in order to look at all the possible options, look at all the possible risks, and come up with a safe way forward. In the end, it was the atmosphere in the cave and the medical condition of some of the people in the cave that probably forced the hand of the divers, as well as the environmental issues of the fact that the monsoon rains were coming. And with monsoon rains, the cave flow was going to increase again and perhaps even flood that remaining chamber to the ceiling. So the team that moved forward were an elite group of volunteers from around the world, from Britain, from Australia, from Thailand, from Canada. So people from all over the world, experts in the cave diving rescue, got together and decided that they had to bring the kids out. At this point, Dr. Richard Harris, Harry as we know him, went into the cave and stayed with the kids and their coach to assess the medical condition and make a difficult decision about who was going to come out first. Now, should they teach the kids to scuba dive and swim out on their own, or should some other plan be evolved for getting them out? When Harry had a look at the situation and realized that none of the kids could even swim, let alone scuba dive, and he had now dived through these perilous, small, dark, no visibility, squirming chambers to get to the chamber itself, he realized that they would need to create an air supply to keep them safe, create a situation where they wouldn't panic, and get them through some of these small spaces. So they decided to use a rescue litter. It's literally a sked, as some people call it. So it's almost a smooth piece of a plastic-like material that kind of cocoons the person in place when they're injured in a cave. And it's wrapped snugly around them so that they're immobilized. Additionally, that victim could wear a full face scuba mask that would give them their air supply. And that's cinched tight with 5 straps so that it's very secure in place. And since their hands are immobilized, they're not going to be able to tear it off if they panic while they're being dragged through this underwater cave environment. Additionally, it's reported that Harry made a tough decision to use some form of a sedative in order to calm them down, or an anti-anxiety, we're not sure what exactly, but something to calm people down so they're almost in that sort of semi-conscious state, which would make it a whole lot easier psychologically for them to be taken out of the cave. Now, Harry's specialty as a physician is he's an anesthesiologist, and so he knows exactly what he can give safely to someone in a situation like this. So then these kids and their coach were passed along a chain of divers through underwater chambers that then, because of the pumping efforts of the engineers, the water level had lowered, and they could be passed into dry spaces where they were carried in this litter over muddy embankments and rocks and then back down into the next diving section. So it took a chain of rescuers passing them along and giving them a medical check, ensuring that they're still breathing and comfortable and that everything is fine as they're moved through these wet and dry chambers all the way to the exit. It takes hours in order to make this transit and to finally get them back into the hands of the Thai team that could walk them out the final stretch of the cave and get them to the hospital. Now, even once the kids are safely out of the cave, they had to be transported to the hospital for evaluation and also for isolation. And I know the general public's wondering, why can't the families just hug their boys? But these kids have now been in an enclosed cave environment for more than 2 weeks. They've been exposed to, bacteria and fungus and also other pathogens like histoplasmosis is an example. So it's a problem that can happen to cave divers. It's a lung infection that's caused from bat guano, basically. And it can cause lesions in the lungs and offer up pneumonia-like symptoms. So these kids had to be evaluated and isolated so that we could ensure that they were healthy from any developing infections, but also so they didn't pass anything along to anybody else. Not to mention the psychological health. I mean, imagine yourself trapped in complete darkness for, more than 2 weeks, not knowing whether somebody's coming to rescue you or not. But as these kids were taken to the hospital, there was still another phase of the rescue that was ongoing. It took several days to get everyone else out, of course, but even after the coach was out, there were still some Thai Navy divers and Dr. Harris that were inside that chamber, and they had to get out, as well as that entire chain of people who were passing along the kids and resupplying the cave. Now, it's reported that even, minutes after the last person was out of the cave, the last victim was out of the cave, that is, the pumps failed and the water started to immediately and rapidly rise. So that rescue team had to rush out of the cave in order not to become victims themselves. There are so many dangers, and those dangers were not just faced by the victims, by the coach, and by the rescuers that have had most of the limelight. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people involved in this rescue. There were cooks and caretakers and ambulance drivers and engineers. There were military personnel that were endlessly ferrying things in and out of the cave, support people, media relations people, construction workers, climbers in the mountains. It took an entire world population of experts in many different fields to volunteer selflessly and get together and manage this rescue. It's truly remarkable how the world came together without any regard for race, creed, borders, and boundaries. It's a beautiful story about the resilience and the good nature of humanity working together to save these kids and their coach from the cave, working together to bring a great story to the world, to bring together people internationally.
Thanks for
joining me at Into the Planet videos. Don't forget to subscribe and click the links in the description to support this channel. Thanks.